Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back from the hiatus. Jesus Christ, Al told me I need 2 months off, so we are back after, I think, 2 months. Episode 319. Today we're getting into a few of the key topics. May drag a little, but I'm going to keep to the script. The Cowichan Takeover, top of the list here. We'll get into that. October market update, and naturally the federal budget has been rubber stamped, passed, and how it's going to affect your Vancouver real estate. Well, let's go. So, topic number one, the Cowichan Takeover, the Cowichan ruling. I'm going to stick to the notes on this. I'm not going to fly off topic. We're going to stay as even keeled as we can. You've all heard about this already, but I've been asked about it more and more. People see snippets from the news, so I've got the notes here, so we're going to run through them just to keep you as informed from a very uninformed topic as possible. So 800 acres along the Fraser River, as you probably all know, has now been granted Aboriginal title recognition. This is from an original 1,846 acres that was, I'd say, preyed upon. Many others wouldn't. 846 acres, which were the initial claim back in 2019. This started in 2014, and then the court proceedings began 2019. Longest trial in Canadian history, 513 days. We'll get into the costs at the end, which is disgusting. But anyway, at the end of the day, 800 acres has been granted this title. Now, they've been given 12 months to work out how this is all going to be worked through. So we are still in that phase naturally right now, as this just got passed, I believe, just over a month ago, 2 months ago. 150 property owners affected in total, specifically residential properties. Area has about 45 private owned properties, some which are multi-million-dollar homes, large properties, as you can imagine. Commercial properties, land parcels encompassing various commercial operations, including country meadows. Golf courses in there as well. Industrial properties, also vast pieces of industrial land featuring distribution centers, the likes of Canadian Tire, Wayfair, Coca-Cola. I've heard Amazon is down there as well. Other lands, federal crown lands, City of Richmond lands, Vancouver, Fraser, Port Authority, and farmlands, all included in that 800 acres, which has had will have new title layered over it. What does this mean for the land? Some people have said there may very well be a dual title system, which I think is a ridiculous notion. At the end of the day, you've got peace of mind going in. Are you buying freehold? Are you buying leasehold? Are you buying prepaid leasehold, non-prepaid leasehold, leasehold from the city, leasehold from the Cowichan Nation? What is it? And from that point forward, you've got your, from a buying perspective, naturally, you've got your list of banks, some big, and as that leaves freehold title, your options thin and thin and thin as you go along. So at the end of the day, what any given buyer may be comfortable with buying with regards to its title. More importantly, as most people get mortgages when they purchase, what banks will allow you to take their money for said purchase. So a dual title system, I think, is a little bit ridiculous because you can't have 50% freehold and 50% 99-year leasehold Cowichan land unless the whole banking system is going to rejig or be mandatorily rejig options for these types of lands, which, I mean, who knows at this point? I highly doubt it because this circumstance is too small, but it's the first, I'd say, domino to a much bigger potential issue for those banks when it comes to this, let alone owners, but we'll get into that. So that's one of the things. I've heard other interviews and so forth stating that if there's any value lost in transitioning these land titles by way of original treaties, which were apparently the whole poster issue of what was the advantage that was taken back in the day that we're now kind of taking responsibility for, if you will, is that the government would owe said landowners that are now affected by title adjustment any difference in value. What does that look like? All levels of government naturally are currently broke in this country, and I don't think that's changing anytime soon. So what does that look like? These things are all part of this 12-month process, which is the initial process that the courts has layered onto this situation to complete it. Now, then you've got the appeals process. So the City of Richmond has already appealed this decision. That is not in court yet, but that has been officially lodged. Provincial and federal governments have said they are on board with the appeals process. The words you're hearing out of David Eby are very subjective to that narrative, that he is on board for this appeals. He says he is, but then very quickly after that, he's very quick to say that we need to all be together. Yes, private property land rights need to be respected, but respected is a very loose word in this circumstance, in my opinion, specifically when there are very public displays of coming together and we should all be together and we need to step forward together going on the following day. So very scary. Current waiting game, titles recognized legally, that is now decided. How will this be layered onto current land use is kind of the 12-month process, which is the biggest question mark for those specific poor owners right now. That 12-month grace period taking place, we're about, again, 1 to 2 months in on that. And how will this change proceed, again, in real life, and what that will look like for those owners. With the appeals process now in play and that timeline, the city appeal, again, was confirmed in 2025. Nothing set yet for court dates, but there's a variety of people appealing. There's other nations appealing this. Obviously, the main appeal is going to be for the side of the people that are owning there. The City of Richmond appeal is kind of the big one for them to try and reel this back to whatever degree. Local community, for the most part, obviously is on edge, angry and scared. And these long-term Richmond owners, short or long-term, Richmond owners of what was once freehold land, and then obviously trickling into the rest of the city, what does this mean? So we'll get into it in a little bit, feasible and indefeasible title. This brings a lot of uncertainty that I think should not be minimized. Just, oh, they'll take care of it, don't worry, it's just a blip, it was just a court decision. This was the longest court process the country's ever seen, and after the longest court process, this is the decision that was made for all these current owners on this land to be, I don't want to say displaced, because that's not what's happening, but more important, I think the biggest issue is value. If you've purchased a place in the last 6 months, 9 months, 12 years, they interviewed guys that have been there since the 70s, still paying mortgages. There's a growing list of banks who have stated that they're not going to lend in the current circumstance. So what does this mean for those people? Those are going to be the people hurt the most at this point, because that land is now, in my opinion, forever tainted. So the day before, or the day of this decision being made, my opinion is that land and any of those properties lost minimum 50% of their value. And that is basically due to the question marks that are now going to be forever tied to this. If they do appeal this and they win, will the nation reappeal? Of course they will. If they appeal this and lose, that just further opens up, that land is done, and it further opens up the rest of the land to any of these claims, so on and so forth. So for those poor people, their property values, and again, they're not going to be like anyone else. The majority of people in this country, I think, hold the majority of their value, their life's work, their money, their wealth, if you will, in their real estate, because what was once thought that was a secure, safe, and the safest way forward in growing your wealth in this country has now begun to be chipped away at. But before this, that's the commonality from Point Grey to Richmond to Chilliwack to anywhere. So that's, I think, outside of these people of Richmond who have felt the first brunt of it. Unfortunately, they purchased there. Unbeknownst to them, I'm sure that this court case was going on. And now the day after, not all, there's always going to be people that are going to speculate that will be your buyers. But if you had a buyer today, they're just not going to be interested. There's too much risk involved, even at half the price. The way people look at real estate, in my opinion, it's so expensive anyway. There's so much risk of mortgage fees and costs and costs and costs anyway. Why would you bring this question mark into the situation? So like anytime you may have speculation coming in and people offering pennies on the dollar because maybe one day this will all blow over and they'll be fine. And in the meantime, you can live in it and nothing changes on the ground. It's just the optics around the title and the lack of security that are now up in smoke. And there goes again, for that reason, my opinion is at least 50 to 60% of the value is gone, and you're only left catering to those speculators. Or of course, if you've got $1 million property and someone can pick it up for 300,000, they may take the risk. So very unfortunate for those people. Again, this plays into that long-term narrative naturally of never-ending reconciliation from the government, from people who believe this is what should be done. I've talked to a variety of people. Majority of people I've talked to, of course, are very fearful of this growing. I have talked to people who think, well, if they got screwed over hundreds of years ago, whenever this was, then it's theirs. Okay, that's a point of view, but I think that's fine. Everyone's allowed to have their opinions on this. But again, the biggest thing I think facing today is the current market value loss of those people that will not come back. And then does this bleed out of that 800 acres into the rest of the city and beyond? Again, back to the cost of this all, Fraser Institute, that 2019 to 2025 lawsuit, 513 days. Fraser Institute is of the opinion that this is in excess, once everything is said and done, of $100 million in cost. So that too is ridiculous. To me, this is all very one-sided, but anyway, my opinion here doesn't matter. I'm just a messenger of the info. So what is this indefeasible and defeasible title? Some of you may know what these words mean, some of you may not. Just to break down, indefeasible land title is a conclusive and unchangeable, meaning it is secure and not subjective to voiding level of land title, which is what freehold land is, freehold detached or freehold strata. And defeasible land is a property title that can be annulled or voided if a specific condition occurs. So basically, with the approval of this, that judge has just taken indefeasible land and converted it into defeasible land, which means it's clearly more vulnerable and nowhere near as secure as any of those freehold buyers anticipated it to be. So it's really, and that's again the bigger picture scary part. Does this move out? We want to reconcile, we want to do this, we want to do that. These are going to go to court because they've been going to court for a very long time. And once judges start making benchmark decisions, benchmark rulings like this, and others follow, it's just a matter of how far does this go? Does the province actually put a stop to it, or do they say, no, we're very on board with reconciliation, as clearly they are, and we are going to let this slide. So where does the buck stop is kind of the biggest thing right now. I think it's a very dangerous road to be going down with regards to the ownership of everyone around here and how vulnerable it actually may be. We'll see. But yeah, other claims that have been made, which have kind of popped up in the meantime. Port Coquitlam First Nations have a land claim in play currently right now on all government-owned land, provincial, regional, and city lands. No private ownership is included in that. But that began in 2016. 37 current claims and treaty negotiations taking place in the Lower Mainland in general right now. So 37 of these lawsuits are in play right now for different areas. And another one that's come in the news recently is Kamloops, including Sun Peaks. Claim began in 2015 of 1.25 million hectares of land with this claim on there. On it up there. Provincial government sticking again to private property rights need to be respected. What does that actually look like? A joint respect, a respect as it was. Where is the line going to be drawn? And I think that's the biggest thing. The people in Richmond on the 800 acres, they're screwed. That sucks. Everyone else, the question mark is, are they too going to have these question marks layered over their properties? That's where we're at with it today. I hope that was a balanced opinion of that. And I think we'll know more in the coming, not days or weeks, but probably handfuls of months when it comes to this. Topic one, done, market update. Favored buyer's market with inflated inventory and slower sales. I think this is all relatively common sense at this point. If you are priced sharply, you will still move. There are still markets which are sellers markets because people are pricing properly. As price points soften and continue to do so, we're still seeing activity out there. Mind you, it is kind of softened activity naturally, but there are pockets that are still being classed by the sales to active listings ratio as sellers markets, and that's because people are paying attention and keeping those numbers as tight as possible. And when the numbers make sense, the property will still sell, unless of course it's got issues and all that. Sales, Metro Vancouver, we'll just try and run through this. Year over year, Metro Vancouver, all sales are down 14.3%. Year over year, they are down 14.5%. Sorry, 10-year average, they're down 14.5. Detached is down 4.3%. Condos are down 23.1%. Naturally, the most affected market, as it has been through this whole rigmarole. Townhomes down 4.8%. That's Metro Vancouver, all properties. Sales to active listings ratio, again, detached market, Metro Vancouver, buyers market 11.3%, townhouse 17.6%, balanced market, condos, all of Vancouver, 15.5% balanced market. So overall, we're at a balanced market, generally speaking, not in pricing, in activity, in sales, numbers to active listings, 14.2% balanced market. Listings, Metro Vancouver, October, all listings, 5,438 new listings of all types. That is the exact same as this time last year, and 16.3% above the 10-year average. Total October listings, all listings, old and new, we've got 16,393 listings out right now. That is 13% above October 2024, and that is 35.9% above the 10-year average. So ample options out there. Home price index, Metro Vancouver down 3.4%. In general, detached down 4.3%, 1.916 million. Vancouver condo, 718,000, benchmark price down on the year 5%. And townhomes, 1,066,000, down 3.8% on the year. Andrew Lees, Greater Vancouver economist, Greater Vancouver Real Estate Board economist. After peaking in June, inventory levels have edged lower and prices have eased across all market segments as slower than usual sales activity meets the highest inventory levels seen in many years. 1 year change, detached, best performing market, Squamish 8.7%, worst performing market, East Burnaby 9.3% down. Condos, best performing market, North Van 0.5% up on the on the year. West Van down 12%. And townhomes, Port Coquitlam up 1.8%. East Van down 8.9%. Total market, best performing market of all segments is Squamish at 1.4% up. And Pitt Meadows down 9.3%. That is your October market update. Rates, as we saw, October was the fourth rate cut this year, another 0.25. We're down 1 full point now in 2025 from 3.25 to 2.25. We've got one more meeting thus far, December 10th. Words from the last meeting were that they're done for the year. Personally, I don't believe it. I think they will drop again on the 10th, but we will see. Some other little fun details here. National arrears rate. How's everyone doing out there? Are mortgages getting paid? Is everyone good to go? Overall mortgage arrears rate, 90 days or over of non-payment of your mortgage. For August 2025 was 0.24%. Data published by Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC, indicates a rate of 0.22% for the second quarter of 2025 and an increase from the low of 0.14, which was the lowest in 2022, but still below the 2012 rate of 0.38. That makes no sense to me. Anyway, we are at 0.22. So full countrywide, we are well under 1% arrears rate. I think that's a sign of, even though so many of these mortgages have now rolled over, even though rates are coming down from the whole COVID lows, and then the term coming up in expiry, which was the big mortgage debt wall they were talking about for a while, that has kind of come, is still coming, and basically banks are being flexible, have been told by the feds as they were, this all started a couple years ago, be more flexible. We don't want arrears obviously jumping through the roof, and they've done clearly a very good job of that, as we are under 0.5% of arrears in our mortgages Canada-wide. Current events, basically market whole, pre-sale market is still slow. Default rates are increasing. Default meaning you bought a pre-sale and you cannot afford to close on it for whatever reason. So that inventory buildup, I haven't heard of a lot of developers taking buyers to court yet, but those numbers are mounting. Again, similar to the banks, I think developers, as much as they can hold on to, are being very flexible. There's certain higher end projects in downtown here that have been extremely flexible, coming on years of flexibility. And that's just, again, going to be the comfort level and the financial depth of pocket, if you will, for each and individual developers. Now, last but not least, federal budget. How does it affect the real estate market? Build Canada Homes department being built, a new department. Focused on large-scale building of affordable housing. That's one thing. It doesn't affect the resale buyer or seller. Tax incentives for rental housing development. Again, more homes is the narrative here. We need more inventory, which is the narrative here, to bring pricing down. Thoroughly disagree with that, but that's the narrative of the feds. Plan to cut some of the development charges. Now, this is interesting. Again, an inflationary thing, but it's there. Multi-unit residential building in half. Typically, this is the city layering on, we've talked about this many times, community development charges. Basically, the city, again, being broke, saying we can't afford to redo sewage lines, roads. We want more parks, sidewalks. So you, Mr. Big, Fat, Rich, Deep-Pocketed Developer, are going to do that for us. And if you don't, you're not getting your building permits. But if you do, you'll get your permits, and we may give you a little extra density, and. So developers essentially being blackmailed in this case because the city is too incompetent to do it themselves. Variety of different circumstances going on there. But anyway, the budget specifically says, budget introduces a new fund, 17.2 billion over 10 years, which is 1.7 billion a year, dedicated to infrastructure, which enables housing, roads, water, waste systems, etc., to be developed. To tap into the provincial and territorial stream of this fund, the budget says that the respective province, or territory must substantially reduce development charges and not levy other taxes that hinder housing supply. So if you don't tax this tax and you don't try and get the money from elsewhere, you can apply and we will give you federal funds to implement these upgrades. Roads, water, waste system, blah, blah, blah. So they're trying to alleviate the shouldering of said cost from the developers via the cities in order to, again, get building moving, try and remove some of that red tape. So this is naturally positive. It's just more debt being created. However, all of the government can really do is create debt or scrape taxes, as we know. But in this case, when the cities and the city's balance sheets are broken due to lack of knowledge, from what it seems, of balancing a budget, or maybe it's just care, who knows, then the federal government is now getting involved in these city and municipal level things, which is kind of ridiculous. It's going to be looked at as a positive because the money just appears again. God forbid your kids or your grandkids' tax burdens go up in the future because of it, but we don't care about that. We want things done today. So they're doing it in this way. Those are the main things I believe are going to affect the real estate market here in Vancouver from the federal budget. If it all comes together, that is. It has been passed, but no money pushed yet. That's all we got for you today. Thank you for tuning back in, and I will see you soon.